Hey guys, quick creepy fact. Only 20% of you watching are subscribed. It's totally free and helps me write more scary stories like this one. Thank you for the support. Now let's dive right in. I never had a calling. Some people grow up dreaming of becoming doctors, artists, astronauts, people with a destination in mind before they even learn to drive. Me? I drifted. Floated from one thing to the next like I was waiting for the current to make up its mind. I tried college for a year. It felt like burning money just to sit in rooms that smelled like whiteboard markers and regret. I tried waitressing. That tested every ounce of patience I never had. But the military? That was different. Waking up every day with orders and expectations. It gave my life shape, purpose. I pushed my body until it stopped arguing and followed commands until they felt like instinct. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. The pay wasn't bad either. I climbed ranks faster than most. Not because I was the strongest or the smartest, but because I never hesitated. When things fell apart and everyone else froze, I moved. Stubbornness got me through training. Precision kept me alive. The higher-ups noticed. After a while, I stopped showing up on the regular mission boards, started getting called in after hours, closed-door briefings, no witnesses, no reports. Just a whisper in a flight. Black ops, containment jobs. The kind of operations where your name never leaves the room and no one sends a thank you card. I've rappelled into hostage zones in the middle of the night. I've tracked insurgents through blizzards thick enough to erase footprints. I've walked into biological threats with nothing but a mask and a directive. But none of it prepared me for the mission that began with a red folder. It was handed to me in a concrete room behind a hangar that didn't have a name. The lights buzzed like they wanted to go out but couldn't. The metal table in front of me had no papers, no clipboard, just the folder. It was matte red, not a color you see often in our line of work. No military insignia, no classification label, just a strange black emblem stamped into the center, a triangle wrapped in a spiral. Below it, a single line of block text, Level 6, eyes only. My fingers tingled before I even touched it. I opened the folder, expecting the usual, satellite photos, grid coordinates, topographical maps, something, but instead there were just 2 paragraphs, printed in bold on heavy cream-colored paper. It looked like it had been designed to outlast everything but fire. Location, Boreal Region, Canadian Shield. Objective, eliminate hostile presence. Class C threat. Directive, no witnesses, no extraction until complete. Further instruction on arrival, no names, no images, no signatures. At the bottom, a dotted line waited, a space for a name, mine. I didn't pause, I didn't ask questions. I just picked up the pen, wrote Kristen R. Harper, and closed the folder like I was signing for a pizza. 2 hours later, I was strapped into the back of a C-130 Hercules, high above Alberta. The metal floor vibrated under my boots like a drum beat trying to get under my skin. There were 4 others seated around me in the belly of that bird. 5, if you counted the one who wasn't speaking. Steve was our mission commander. Mid-40s, jaw like a hatchet, the kind of guy who could crush a throat and still show up wrinkle-free for inspection. I'd run more black ops with him than I could count. If there was anyone on this mission I would trust to keep their head, it was him. Max sat up near the cockpit, glued to a device that looked like a cross between a drone controller and a heart monitor. He was our tech specialist. Smart, twitchy, and mouthy. The last time we worked together, he nearly cost us an extraction in Morocco because he couldn't stop live streaming diagnostic data over a dead frequency. I made him eat dirt for that. Not a metaphor. Then there was Maddie. She had shoulders like a linebacker and the hands of a trauma nurse. You don't expect someone who looks like they could bench press a Jeep to stitch a leg mid-firefight without flinching, but that's Maddie. She was the best medic I'd ever served with, and I don't say that lightly. Then there was me. Rifle. Grenades, knife. My job was simple, protection. If it moved, I stopped it. If it threatened my team, I put it in the ground. And finally, the woman. She didn't speak. She didn't move much either. Blonde hair pulled into a tight, regulation bun. Full fatigues, no name tag. Something about her was wrong, though. Too stiff, too civilian. She kept fidgeting with the sleeves of her jacket, and she winced every time we hit turbulence. By her feet was a massive black case, matte surface, double-locked, not standard issue. What's in the case? I asked, raising my voice over the engine drone. She didn't respond, just held it tighter and kept staring forward like I hadn't spoken. Steve met my eyes from across the bay and gave a small shake of his head, the kind that said, "Not now, don't push it." So I leaned back and crossed my arms, but I didn't stop watching her. She didn't blink enough. She clutched that case like it had her soul inside it. Whatever this mission was, it wasn't war. And the real enemy? Something told me we hadn't even been introduced yet. The plane never landed. It dipped, low and slow, skimming just above the treetops like it was afraid to get too close. Then the cargo ramp opened, wind howling through the bay. Steve gave the order without hesitation. Go. We jumped. Boots hit frozen dirt. Parachutes collapsed behind us in the clearing like broken wings. The air hit me first, cold and sharp, thick with pine and something else. Something metallic, something faintly rotting. As soon as the last of our packs hit the ground, the plane was gone. No hover, no radio check, no final instructions, just the rumble of engines fading into a cloudy sky that felt too low for comfort. We were alone. I adjusted my rifle strap and took a long, steady look around. The clearing was barely a suggestion in a sea of endless trees. Pines and birch stretched in every direction, like walls with no exits. Fog hung in the upper canopy like something forgotten, creeping downward in long, slow spirals. The silence was not peaceful. It was wrong. No birds, no insects, no wind. The forest didn't sound asleep, it sounded abandoned. Steve motioned us into a loose semicircle and pulled a map from his vest. The paper was old, folded too many times, crinkled at the corners like it had been carried through more missions than it should have survived. This area has been flagged for high-priority observation, he said, voice low but firm. We've had multiple satellite passes pick up something strange. No wildlife movement, no thermals, nothing. Max chuckled under his breath and tried to break the tension. So what? We're hunting Canadian ghosts? Steve didn't even look at him. It's not a joke. He flattened the map and jabbed a thick finger at a red-ringed section near the center. At first, we thought it was a disease, he continued. Something wiping out local populations. But then we started seeing predator die-offs. Apex species. Bears. Wolves. Gone. Gone as in dead? I asked. He nodded. Wiped out. We thought it might be poaching at first, or some sort of engineered virus. But when the drones got here, they captured footage we couldn't explain. What kind of footage? Maddie asked. Steve looked up and locked eyes with me. Dead bears. Hundreds of them. Lying in piles. No clear wounds. No patterns. Just stripped. Stripped? I echoed, frowning. Like ribs at a barbecue, he said flatly. No visible attack patterns. No scavenger trails. Just flayed muscle and bones. I felt my grip tighten around the stock of my rifle. Could it be a larger predator? Maybe an invasive species? Something the local ecosystem hasn't seen before? If it was natural, Steve said calmly, we'd see signs, trails, droppings, fur, something. But when you find entire territories cleared out and nothing left behind, that's not nature. That's something else. None of us had anything to say to that, except for her. The woman, the one with the case, was crouched on the edge of the clearing. She hadn't spoken since the jump. She hadn't made a sound, but she was watching the trees with the kind of focus you only see in people who expect something to come through them. She didn't blink. Not often enough. Steve folded the map and clipped it back onto his vest. Mission's simple. Track the source. Identify the threat. Neutralize it. We move at first light and don't stop until we confirm the area is secure. He didn't say what we all heard in his tone. If we fail, we don't come back. We set up camp near the tree line. The clearing was wide, but the forest leaned inward like it was trying to swallow the light. The sun dipped behind the trees faster than I expected, turning the sky a bruised shade of violet. Maddie pitched the tents. Max launched a drone. I stacked the last of the ammunition near the fire pit. Then Steve called out, "Gather up." We circled the fire pit. No fire yet, just a pile of branches that no one really wanted to light. The civilian woman stepped forward with her case and set it down with care. 2 clicks later, it opened. Inside were night vision goggles. Rows of them. Matte black, neatly secured in foam like surgical tools. Max raised an eyebrow. "What is this? A costume party? You can't be serious." The woman didn't look at him. Instead, she stared straight ahead and said, in a calm, measured voice, "The enemy can only be seen through these." Her voice was soft, but the words landed hard. Silence fell over us, heavy and immediate. Max opened his mouth to joke again, but stopped halfway. His smirk faded. "That's impossible," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. "I thought so too," she replied, "until I saw the footage." "What footage?" I asked, eyes shifting to Steve. "You didn't mention anything about footage." Steve didn't meet my gaze right away. He hesitated. "There were other teams," he said, "sent in over the past few months, same mission profile, same coordinates." "And what happened to them?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "They never came back." Maddie exhaled beside me, quiet and sharp. "So we're not the first. We're just the last attempt." Steve nodded once. "This time, we're getting answers." No one spoke after that. Lottie, the civilian, held her goggles like they were rosary beads. Max turned his over in his hands, fingers twitching. Maddie stared out at the trees. Then it came, the scream. It pierced through the forest like a needle through skin, high-pitched, warped, somewhere between metal grinding and a baby crying through broken speakers. It wasn't human, not even close. We froze. Every hair on my body stood straight. We each reached for our goggles at the same time. Not out of belief, out of fear. I slid mine over my face, adjusted the strap, and let the world turn green. The trees stretched tall in eerie detail. Shadows moved like liquid. The fog pulsed faintly. And in the distance, floating just above the treetops, something moved. It wasn't touching the ground. It had wings. It was not a bird. It was not anything that belonged to the natural world. The creature hovered, its wings flapping in slow, unnatural rhythms. They were leathery, cracked, and stretched taut like dried flesh pulled over broken bone. Its body curled and twisted in midair, folding at strange angles as if it was struggling to remember how to move. It moved like a bat, but there was nothing animal about it. And then I saw its face. No mouth, just a gaping, pulsing mass at the center of its head, a warped grin of black teeth, with something shifting behind it like coiled muscle. It looked like it had never been fully formed. Or maybe it had been unformed. It screamed again. The sound pierced through the goggles, vibrating inside my skull. It was not just noise, it was pressure. Like my brain was being pressed between two plates of glass. I raised my rifle and fired. The thing veered sharply to the left, dodging the bullets before they even reached it. The air cracked where the rounds passed through. I gritted my teeth. Max fired next, his aim wild but steady. Steve followed, and then Maddie. Muzzle flashes lit up the clearing in stuttering bursts of white and orange. The creature dropped lower, wings slicing the fog like blades, claws outstretched. It was trying to land, trying to take one of us, but the gunfire kept it off balance. It twisted through the chaos like it could sense our intent before we moved. It was not just fast, it was predictive, reactive. "Form a circle," Steve shouted. "It does not see behind itself." We moved instantly, backs to each other, rifles out. The creature screeched, turning sharply in midair. It locked onto Steve and fast and low. It did not see me. I was behind it. My angle was perfect. I held my breath, aimed for the base of the neck, and pulled the trigger. The round hit center. The creature spasmed. Its wings snapped inward, body crumpling mid-flight. It crashed into the clearing like a wet sack of cement hitting steel. Dust and dirt kicked up around it, and then it was still. We held position. No one spoke, no one moved. The clearing fell into a tense, electric silence. Then Lottie broke from cover. She ran across the clearing before I could stop her and dropped to her knees beside the creature's corpse. "Lottie!" I shouted, chasing after her. "What the hell are you doing?" "It might still be alive." She did not answer at first. She pressed 2 fingers to the twisted chest of the thing and leaned in close. She studied it, not like a soldier examining a kill, but like a scientist watching an experiment unfold. "It is not breathing," she said. "Look, right here." She pointed to a spot where the chest dipped inward. I saw no movement, no rise, no pulse. Just charred, cracked skin and the stench of something ancient and ruined. She was right. The thing was dead. Probably. Then she opened her case. Not for goggles this time, for tools. Inside were slides, vials, instruments, and a compact scanner that blinked to life as she tapped a sequence on its screen. She wasn't just tagging along. She was here for this. "You're a biologist," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "Technically, I specialize in virology and xenopathology." Of course she did. She scraped a piece of the creature's wing into a sample tray. It hissed when it touched the glass. Steve called us back to the fire pit. His voice was rough, lower than before. "We move at first light," he said. "We follow the last known coordinates from the previous team. If they left anything behind, we retrieve it. If there are more creatures, we take them down." Max leaned against a tree, one hand pressed to his forehead. Sweat ran down his temple in slow streaks. "Hold on, you mean we're going deeper into that forest after this?" He gestured toward the thing on the ground. "You're serious?" Steve didn't answer him. Lottie did. "There is more than one," she said, voice flat. The clearing dropped into silence again. Max's expression darkened. "I thought it was a one-off, a mutation, something singular." She shook her head slowly, lifting her goggles. "It is not a mutation. It is not random. This is a species." I looked down at the creature's body. The longer I stared, the less I understood it. Its skin looked like a patchwork of biological contradictions, gray-black in places, translucent in others, fleshy but hardened like chitin along the spine. Its limbs were too long, bent in too many places, with joints that moved like they were improvising. And its face, it was not really a face at all. At the center of its head were dozens of tiny wet blinking eyes clustered like mold spores or an infection. No nose, no ears, no mouth, just eyes. Blinking, even in death. I forced myself to look away. The rest of the team retreated to their tents. One by one, the adrenaline faded and the fatigue crept in. Steve sat sharpening his knife in silence. Max paced near the edge of the camp. Maddie stared into the trees, eyes unfocused. I stayed next to Lottie. She continued collecting tissue, preserving samples, taking readings from a device I couldn't begin to understand. Her movements were methodical, precise. This wasn't fear, it was obsession. I kept my rifle across my lap, set goggles around my neck, eyes on the tree line. "I'll stay on watch," I said quietly. She nodded once. The gesture was small, but full of weight. We did not speak again that night. The creature lay between us, twisted and broken, a reminder of everything we had seen and everything still waiting. And beyond the trees, the forest remained impossibly still. It was not resting. It was listening. Morning came, but it felt nothing like a beginning. The sun barely pierced the canopy above us. Instead, it crawled through the branches in weak, colorless rays that made the forest look like a faded photograph. I rubbed my eyes with one hand, my other still wrapped around the grip of my rifle. I had not slept. None of us really had. Lottie was already crouched over her gear. She moved with that same hyper-focused energy, cleaning, organizing, sealing vials, like she was back in a sterile lab and not kneeling in a clearing soaked in sweat and blood. The strange quiet had settled in again, heavier than before. I finally took off my goggles. My eyes stung in the morning haze. Everything looked dull now, flat, like reality had downgraded itself while I was not looking. Then I turned. The creature's body was gone. At first, I thought someone had moved it, but the spot where it had landed was still marked by a dark stain in the grass, like something had burned itself into the ground and evaporated. I looked around. No drag marks, no footprints, no sign of tampering, just absence. My pulse picked up. I walked over to Lottie, crouched beside her, and glanced into her open sample case. Every single dish was empty. Not cracked, not shattered, not spilled, just clean, like there had never been anything inside them. I stood up slowly and pulled the goggles back over my eyes. There it was, the creature. Exactly where we had left it, perfectly still, wings splayed, eyes closed, visible only through the goggles. I took them off. Gone again. I looked back at Lottie. She was labeling a slide without blinking. "This thing isn't just invisible," I said quietly. "It exists on another level entirely." She didn't respond, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. She already knew. We moved out within the hour. The deeper we went into the forest, the more the trees closed in around us. They were taller here, thicker, older. The kind of trees that felt like they had been here before the first cities were ever built. The air turned damp and close. The silence clung to our skin. No insects, no birds, no movement at all except for us. Then I spotted it, a fragment of green fabric flapping low near the underbrush. "There," I said, pointing ahead. We advanced slowly, weapons raised, eyes sharp. The remains of a military campsite emerged through the fog. 2 tents, half collapsed. Ration kits scattered across the ground, gear discarded mid-task, bullet casings glinting in the moss like teeth. But no bodies. Only signs of panic. A cookpot left over the ashes of a dead fire, a folding chair tipped sideways, a boot lying in the grass, its laces still tied. Then I saw the blood. It started near the edge of one tent, just a thin line at first, like someone had spit up dark syrup. Then more. Thick, dragging streaks through the grass. It led away from camp like someone had been pulled. Not one person, multiple. Jesus, Max muttered behind me. Where the hell are the bodies? Maddie was already kneeling by the trail. Her fingers hovered over the smear, touching it lightly. This is fresh, she said. This didn't happen long ago. Steve nodded. Let's move. We followed the trail. It twisted through the trees, dipping into shallow ravines and looping around crumbling stumps. The blood grew heavier, more erratic, like whatever had been dragged had started fighting back. Then we found the tree. Deep claw marks gouged the bark, 3 parallel slashes, each one the width of a human arm. The cuts were clean and deep, not animal, not natural, something large, something precise. Eventually, the trees opened, and we saw it. The mountain. It was not on our maps, but it was real. It rose from the forest like a broken tooth, black and jagged. At its base was a hollow, an opening far too smooth, too symmetrical to be natural. It looked less like a cave and more like a door carved into the side of a god. The blood trail led straight into it. Steve raised a hand, signaling stop. He stared at the entrance for a long moment. Then he turned to us. This is it. No one argued. We entered. The temperature dropped immediately. The air inside the cave was dense and wet. Our boots scraped against stone slick with moisture. The light from our helmets barely pushed the darkness back. The walls pulsed faintly with a sound. No, a feeling. A low, continuous vibration, like the mountain had a heartbeat. I kept my finger close to the trigger. Then the screams began. Not one scream, not 2, dozens. They came from every direction, echoing, warped. Some sounded close, others impossibly far away. But none of them sounded human anymore. They were high-pitched, hollow, laced with something sharp and wrong, like metal scraping across a chalkboard made of bone. Lottie stopped beside me. Her voice shook as she whispered, "They're still alive." I looked at her, then back into the dark. "No," I said. "They are not. Not anymore." The sounds bounced around us like sonar from a broken machine. You couldn't tell where they were coming from. They were just everywhere. Lottie started handing out goggles again. Her hands trembled as she fumbled through the case. She muttered to herself, repeating something under her breath that sounded like a mantra or a warning. I slipped my goggles on. Steve took point. Max followed him, his rifle clutched tight against his chest. Lottie stayed close to me, cradling her equipment like armor. I walked last. Every step felt like a mistake. The walls began to shift. They bulged in places, contracted in others. I wasn't sure if it was the low light or the goggles playing tricks on me, but it felt like we were walking through something alive. Then, a scream. Close. Behind us. I spun, goggles lighting up the space. One of the creatures came flying out of the darkness, fast and low, wings slicing the air, its body twisted in mid-flight. In the grainy green view of the goggles, it looked like pure nightmare, joints bent the wrong way, limbs flailing with impossible speed. I fired. My rifle barked once. The bullet struck center mass. The creature slammed into the ground hard, its body folding inward as it collapsed. Then another scream. This one came from ahead, and another, to the side, and another, closer. Steve's voice crackled over the comms. Swarm. Everyone fall back. Retreat. Chaos erupted. Gunfire ricocheted off the cave walls. Wings beat against the air as the creatures launched themselves at us. Their screams layered over each other, blending into a sound that felt like it was chewing into my spine. I saw one of them crash into Maddie. She went down swinging, smashing the butt of her rifle into its face before putting 2 rounds into its skull. I turned, grabbed Lottie's arm, and yanked her into motion. We ran. The cave blurred around us. Wings slashed through the air above our heads. A creature dropped too close. I shot it mid-fall and didn't stop to watch it hit the ground. Lottie stumbled, but I pulled her with me. She was crying now, barely breathing, but she kept running. Then, light. The exit. We burst from the cave like we were being spit out of a nightmare. I fell to my knees in the grass, lungs heaving, body shaking. My ears rang. My hands throbbed. We were alive. I looked around. Maddie was coughing into her sleeve. Steve crouched low, reloading with shaking fingers. Lottie collapsed beside me, eyes wide and unfocused. And Max was not there. We waited. We stared at the tree line. He did not come out. Steve lowered his rifle. No one said anything. We did not need to. The cave had taken him. We said nothing on the walk back to camp. There was no point in speaking. The silence was not just emotional, it felt environmental, like the woods had absorbed our voices along with our breath. We walked through a world that did not want us in it, and we were finally starting to understand why. Max was gone. Not missing, not maybe, he was taken. And in our line of work, that was the same as dead. By the time we reached camp, the sun had already begun to dip again, casting long shadows across the clearing. No one even looked toward the fire pit. Maddie disappeared into her tent without a word. Lottie dropped her gear next to her case and sat down hard. Her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, like she was trying to fold herself into nothing. Steve sat on an overturned crate near the edge of camp. His rifle rested beside him, untouched. His hands were laced together, like he was trying to pray without saying it aloud. Eventually, he spoke. "We wait until morning," he said. "I'll radio it in then. We need backup. This is bigger than us." I looked up sharply. "You brought a radio?" He did not answer me. He just kept staring past me into the dark trees. He had a radio and never used it. That told me everything I needed to know. "We're not equipped to handle this," he continued. "We've got the samples. That's what matters now. That's the mission." Lottie did not argue. Maddie said nothing. I just stared at him. He sounded like a man trying to convince himself that failure was acceptable. We unpacked our gear slower this time. There was no urgency anymore. Or maybe there was, but it had shifted into something quieter, more fatalistic. Maddie did not speak. She moved like a machine, her face pale and unreadable. Steve checked and rechecked his weapon, but his hands were shaking more than he wanted to admit. Lottie sat near me by the dying fire, arms tucked inside her jacket, face unreadable. "Thanks," she said quietly, "for pulling me out. You didn't have to." I did not look at her at first. I just kept staring at the fire. "Don't mention it." "No, really," she said. "You could have left me. You should have. I'm not trained for this." I finally glanced at her. "You're still breathing. That counts for something." She gave a short, bitter laugh through her nose. "That's a pretty low bar." I nodded slightly. "Welcome to the job." We sat in silence for a while. There was a kind of quiet that came after loss. Not just the kind where people die, but the kind where you finally realize there is no version of the story where you make it out clean. That was the quiet we shared. Then it happened. The scream. High and sharp and unmistakably human. "Maddie." I was on my feet before the others could react, goggles already strapped down over my eyes. I pulled the rifle to my shoulder and sprinted toward her tent. The creature had torn through the fabric like paper. Maddie was on her stomach, screaming, her fingernails clawing at the earth as something dragged her by the ankle. Her boot kicked wildly, her other leg bent at a horrible angle. "Maddie!" I screamed. I opened fire. 3 rounds in a tight burst aimed at the creature's midsection. The bullets hit, but the thing barely flinched. Lottie screamed behind me. Steve shouted something I couldn't hear. My focus narrowed until there was only Maddie. Only the blood she left behind in streaks, only the talons wrapped around her leg as she was pulled into the woods. I kept shooting. It did not matter. The creature let out a shriek like metal tearing underwater and disappeared into the trees, Maddie still in its grip. Just like that, she was gone. We were down to 3. Steve started packing. Just methodical movements, folding maps, tightening straps, clipping gear into place with robotic precision. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were hollow. "You're leaving," I said. It was not a question. He did not stop moving. "We're not a strike force anymore. We're bait." He slung his pack over his shoulder without looking at me. "You're just gonna walk off?" I asked, my voice sharp. "After everything? After Maddie? She's gone." "She was taken," I snapped. "There's a difference." He finally turned to face me. His expression was tired and brittle. "And what exactly do you expect me to do, Kristen? Charge in there blind? Die just like the rest of them?" "You're supposed to lead," I said. "That's what you were chosen for. You think this mission was about recon? You think that's why they sent us?" His face twitched. "I am trying to keep us alive." "Then stop running." He pushed past me without answering. His boots cracked dry pine needles with each step as he moved toward the trees. I watched him go, fury burning under my ribs. Lottie stood beside me, still silent, still pale. "So that's it," I muttered. All that loyalty, all that protocol, and it falls apart the second it gets difficult. She didn't respond. I turned to her fully. Do you have anything? Any data, any analysis, anything that tells us how to kill these things? She hesitated, then nodded. I think it's heat, she said. Their bodies, there's no fur, no carapace, nothing protective, just exposed tissue. And earlier when Steve's flare went off, one of them flinched. They're vulnerable to high temperatures. I blinked, gears turning in my head. Then I dropped to my knees and pulled open Steve's half-zipped pack. Inside was exactly what I was hoping for. Thermite charges, incendiary grenades, and a black case labeled in red stencil, classified, T4 heat payload, a bomb. You were never planning to survive this, I said aloud, more to myself than anyone else. You were planning to end it. I grabbed one of the grenades and tossed it to Lottie. She nearly dropped it. I thought you didn't trust me with weapons. I don't, I said, but you've lived longer than half the squad. That has to count for something. I slung my rifle back over my shoulder and latched the black case shut. Then I looked at the cave in the distance, still black against the horizon. Still waiting. The screaming had stopped. That was the worst part. We finished this? I said. Lottie nodded. Her hands were trembling, but she stood tall beside me, and together we turned back toward the mountain. The forest had changed since the last time we passed through it. The fog was thicker. The trees leaned closer, like they were trying to listen in. Every step felt heavier than it should have, like the ground itself was reluctant to let us go. Lottie walked beside me in silence. Her grenade was clipped to her belt and the straps of her case dug into her shoulders. I carried the black box, the T4 payload, cradled in one arm, my rifle hanging from the other. Neither of us looked back. There was no one left to follow us. When we reached the mountain, the cave loomed larger than I remembered. It yawned before us like the mouth of something ancient and hungry. The air around it was warmer, thick with a strange scent, part rot, part iron, and something sweet underneath, like the aftertaste of bad fruit. We went in anyway. There was no fear anymore, only the mission. Inside, the air turned wet and thick. The walls pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. Every footstep echoed too loudly, like the cave was chewing the sound. We stayed close together, goggles strapped tight, weapons raised. Each corner felt like an ambush waiting to happen. And it was. They attacked fast. We dropped our first incendiary charge and lit up the tunnel. The fire caught quickly, crawling up the slick walls like it had been waiting for a reason. The creatures screamed, their voices a sharp, metallic shriek that made my bones hurt. They fell back. They could not withstand the heat. Lottie lobbed a second grenade deeper down the passage. The blast scattered 3 of them against the wall like rag dolls. Their bodies hissed and popped as they burned, limbs curling inward like leaves in a fire. The deeper we went, the more chaotic the hive became. The creatures were less coordinated now, less precise. They flailed and charged with blind aggression. It was not strategy, it was panic. Then the tunnel opened. We stepped into a cavern the size of a stadium. My breath caught. The walls were lined with pulsing, veined material that looked like a fusion of flesh and fungus. A thick mist hovered in the air. The smell hit harder here. Sour, chemical, rancid. And in the center of it all was the hive. It was not a structure. It was not a creature. It was both. A throbbing mass of tissue and black stone. It beat like a heart, wet, loud, rhythmic. Each pulse sent a vibration through the floor that shook the soles of my boots. Around it, hundreds of the creatures moved in patterns that made no sense, some crawling, some flying, some simply standing and swaying. It was like watching a cult prey to something alive and wrong. Then I saw the bodies. Max. Maddie. What was left of them? Max's torso had been draped across a broken support beam. His face was intact, but the rest of him had been hollowed out like a pumpkin. His skin hung in loose folds, and his dog tags were still around his neck. Maddie had been arranged more carefully. Her eyes were open, but her skull had been split down the center. Her rifle had been placed at her feet like a tribute. Her dog tags rested in her lap. The creatures had posed her. But Steve, he was still alive. Barely. He was probably taken not long after he left the camp. He was curled in the far corner of the cavern, arms over his head, muttering. His shirt had been shredded, black sludge covered his hands and face. His voice was faint and broken. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know it would be this big. I charged forward, rifle up, spraying fire into the air to scatter the swarm. Lottie followed me, flanking wide, her grenade raised. "Steve," I shouted, "get up." He did not look at me. He just kept whispering the same words over and over. I grabbed his arm and yanked. He staggered to his feet, his eyes unfocused, his body sagging like it was already dead. We pulled him toward a hollow between two jagged stone pillars near the wall. A crook just large enough to shield us from the chaos. Flames crawled across the ceiling, lighting the cavern in flickering orange and green. Lottie dropped the case and popped the latches. Inside, the payload gleamed, black casing, red digital timer, compact and horrifying. "This is it," she said. "This will collapse the cavern, maybe the entire mountain." I did not hesitate. I set the timer for 60 seconds and slammed the case shut. "Move," I ordered. We ran. I carried the bomb in both hands. Lottie moved beside me, scanning for the clearest path. Steve limped behind us, coughing and stumbling with every step. When we reached the hive center, I pulled back and threw the bomb into the pulsing mass. It was swallowed instantly. The hive screamed. The sound hit like a pressure wave, flattening us against the stone. My ears rang, my vision blurred, but we kept moving. The ceiling cracked, pieces fell. The creatures went wild, rushing the walls, flinging themselves into the fire. The patterns broke, the hive was losing control. Then Lottie fell. A crack in the ground caught her foot. She hit the stone hard, crying out. I grabbed her arm. She winced but reached up. Steve caught up and shoved from behind, pushing us both forward with all the strength he had left. We sprinted toward the tunnel. 30 seconds. The mountain began to collapse. The air sucked out behind us. Rocks tumbled. The walls folded inward like paper soaked in gasoline. We ran. 20 seconds. The tunnel lit up behind us with flashes of red and white and fire. 10 seconds. We reached the exit. And then Steve stopped. He looked back. His eyes were calm now. "I've got this," he said. "No," I said immediately. "You're coming with us." But he was already moving. He turned back toward the fire and ran, disappearing into the smoke. Then the bomb went off. The world exploded behind us. A shockwave ripped through the tunnel. I felt it in my chest like my lungs had been punched inside out. We were thrown out of the cave and into the moss, tumbling across the forest floor. Everything shook. Then everything was still. I coughed, rolled onto my side, and looked back. The cave was gone. In its place was a smoking crater. Only rubble remained. Lottie sat up beside me, coughing blood onto her sleeve. Her goggles had cracked. Her face was streaked with ash. Her hands trembled, but she was alive. I blinked through dust and tears. Steve was gone. We sat there, surrounded by fire and silence. Then far in the distance, from somewhere deeper in the mountains, we heard them. Screams. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. We both turned to look toward the sound. We destroyed this hive. But it was not the only one.